Hi, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the Power Within. My name is Leigh Ioffe. I'm the founder and director of the Long Short Road and the developer of this program. I'm grateful that you could be here, either in person or watching this recording. I want to begin by thanking you all for making time in your busy lives to be here with me for this hour to learn about how you can increase your mental wellness, how you can strengthen the mental wellness of other people as well, and what we can each do individually and also as a community to create real mental health and strength in our mental health, no matter what challenges we are facing. Now, I know that might seem like a tall order, and it's much easier said than done. I just want to state that at the beginning. We're going to be talking about things tonight that seem easy in theory, but in practice can be challenging for, reason being that we are human. But they're possible. And that's really the framework that I want to go into with tonight, is that change is possible, healing is possible. It's not an easy road by any means, but it is possible and you can do it. Um, just to begin with a disclaimer before we head into the material, this is meant to be an information session to create awareness about mental health. The information provided tonight should not be used as a diagnostic tool and does not replace traditional mental health support. If you are looking for traditional mental health support, or if you are in crisis and are looking for specific resources, you can always reach out to myself or my team, and we will be more than happy to help you create a wellness plan or make a referral for you. So, where are we headed tonight? Well, here's what we're going to be talking about. First of all, the ins and outs of mental health. What is mental health? How is mental health impacted by factors inside of us and outside of us? And what are the things that we can do to really bolster and strengthen ourselves during our challenges, no matter what? How can I support my long, short journey? We'll talk about the long, short road in just a moment, what that actually means. We're also going to create a DIY mental wellness toolkit. So for everyone who's signed up in advance, who's joining me here tonight, you should have received an email from me saying that you'll need a piece of paper and a pen. So make sure you have that handy. If you're watching this later as a record, on the recording, just make sure you have a piece of paper and a pen handy, because we will be doing an exercise together towards the end of the hour to help you really have this practical tool that you can take with you out into the world outside of our time here, to create or to foster or to plant seeds for wellness in your everyday life. There will be a Q&A portion designated at the end of the hour. If you have questions throughout the session, you are welcome to put them in the chat box if you're watching here now live, for those of you who are here. If you have questions after watching the recording, you are more than welcome to email me, and I will do my best to help you and answer the question. Now, I just want to share a little bit about our organization, the Long Short Road, which was founded in 2019 by myself and our original partner, Jack Miller at the Galt Charitable Foundation. We started the Long Short Road really as a way of seeking to end the suicide epidemic among teenagers, that I was witnessing firsthand, that many people that I loved and was working with were witnessing firsthand. And so we sought to create resources and tools that maybe existed in some ways already, but didn't exist in the way that I was seeing was helpful for the people that I was working with. So the Long Short Road, the name the Long Short Road, comes from a concept in Hasidic philosophy from the book of Tanya, which is the seminal work of the foundational work of the Chabad Hasidic philosophy, of which I am a part of. And that concept of the Long Short Road is really the approach of where can we access change. So the idea comes like this. You have a short, long way, which is you try to take shortcuts and you try to, not deal with the hard stuff and not deal with the long, challenging, boring, triggering stuff. And you just try to look for shortcuts. But inevitably, you see that the shortcuts lead to dead ends. And then you have to go all the way around back and take the long road. Or you start with the idea of, I'm taking the long, short road. I'm taking the long road at the start. I recognize that this journey, whatever journey it is that I'm taking, if it's mental health, if it's spirituality, the road is going to be a long one, but it's a road worth taking. And often when we take that long approach, when we know on the start that we're ready to take on whatever comes, it ends up being a shorter journey than if we try to take shortcuts to begin with. And really, when I think of mental health, I think of this concept often. because there are no shortcuts for mental health. Obviously, there's things we can do. Obviously, there's things we can put in place to help bolster and strengthen ourselves, or we wouldn't be here, right? Like if change wasn't possible, this organization wouldn't exist and we wouldn't be having this conversation tonight. That being said, it is a long road, right? Healing is not something that happens overnight. Strengthening your mental wellness is not something that happens in one quick fix. It is a long road, but it's a road worthy of taking, and it's a road that leads to, I think, much better long-term health than trying to take shortcuts to circumvent the hard stuff. Okay? So let's jump in right away with my definition of mental health. There are many ways to define mental health. You can look at the CDC's version of defining mental health, or you could look at other mental health organizations, NAMI, and they all have different ways of explaining what mental health is, and I think they're all fine for the context in which they're used. I also think that it leaves a little bit to be desired. Like, it doesn't really explain what mental health is. Usually when we try to define mental health, we define it as mental illness. So like the one side of the spectrum. So mental health is a spectrum. First of all, it's something that we all are born with the capacity for. If you have a body and a mind, if you have a mind, that means you have capacity for experiencing mental health. So that could be positive mental health, right? And that could also be negative mental health. And usually the focus on a definition of mental health is a negative one, right? Defining difficulty, challenge, or a mental health condition or illness. And the way I would like to define it for you today, the frame that I want you to recognize, is that mental health, in essence, is not a good thing or a bad thing. It's a neutral thing that exists for everyone. And it's either made good or bad by things that happen to us internally and externally. Okay. So the way that I define mental health is the ability, having strong mental health or being a mentally healthy person, is the ability to flow with our experiences, to find balance and inner compassion through difficulties, and learning how to find strength within challenges. Now, this is not easy. I know that this sounds like a very pie in the sky, airy fairy, amazing, exciting, non-attainable definition of mental health. But ultimately, inside of all of us exists the potential and the capacity to be strong, to be resilient, and to be able to find flow and find balance no matter what we're going through. Does it take work? Of course it takes work. Is it always fun? Absolutely not. Nothing in life is always fun, right? Another way that you can think about this, and this is why we have a surfer in the background here, is with this quote from John Kabat-Zinn, who's a meditation teacher. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf. Imagine getting on a surfboard and then the wave knocks you over and you're like, oh my God, why did that do that to me? I was getting ready to start, right? You can't control the strength or the intensity of the wave, right? It's going to come at you, like challenges in life, like difficulties. It's going to happen, right? So it's not about controlling the waves, because you can't. It's about learning how to surf through your experiences. Okay. Now, I'm keeping it pretty simple for our purposes here because we have a short amount of time. This is, it's a nuanced, mental health is very nuanced and multi-layered, and every person is unique and has their own unique experiences that either impacts their mental health positively or negatively. Okay. But as I said before, about 5 minutes ago, change is possible. And also, inside of all of us, every single person in the world, no matter what traumatic, difficult, horrible, or beautiful experiences you've been through in life, every single person inside has inherent tools, God-given tools that are built into us that can help us lead healthy, productive lives, even when we're experiencing challenges. So our mental health, or our ability to find flow, our ability to lead productive, healthy lives, even when we are faced with challenges, is shaped by a couple of things. And we're going to break this down over 2 slides. Okay. So mental health is shaped by our experiences and our relationships. The way we learn how to see the world is through our earliest relationships and through the experiences that we have in our relationships. So our relationships with our parents, with our teachers, with our peers, especially during our developmental years, so like 0 to 18, right? our mental health and our relationship to our well-being, our relationship to our emotions, how we feel about ourselves, our self-talk, our ability to find strength, our ability to feel good about ourselves is not only shaped by experience and relationships, but a very large part of what goes on inside is shaped by what happens between people. Because there is an exchange of information and energy every time two people interact with each other. So even here now, for those of you who are here listening to me live, or even for those of you who are listening to this recording, we are exchanging energy and information right now. You're hearing me speak, and it's doing something to your brain, and it's doing something to your body, right? You're being shaped by this experience, okay? Mental health is also shaped by our brains and our minds. So our our brains, our actual, the neural, the biochemical, our factors, our neurons, the shaping of our brain through development, right? So from 0 to age 30, approximately, when formal brain development ends, our brain shapes how we feel, how we experience the world, right? So we are pattern making people. Our brains create pattern by experience. This is why I started by saying that mental health is shaped by our experiences and relationships, because the experiences that you have in your life will teach your brain how to see the world. It's that simple, and it's also that complicated, okay? And also shaped by our minds. Now, our brain and our mind are two different things. I'm not gonna go into that right now because we're gonna talk about it in the next slide. But I just want to differentiate that for you because a lot of people link them together and say, call them one and the same, the brain and the mind. Not the same thing, not the same function in our body and in how we relate to the world, okay? Mental health can also be shaped by our genetics. So people who may be born with predispositions to anxiety or depression, especially if it runs in in families, right? It can be passed down by families. There's such a thing as epigenetic, right? Epigenetic research, which points to how unresolved issues, traumas, challenges that are experienced by one generation are genetically passed on to the next generation. So it's not a small thing when we say that we are genetically conditioned to experience certain things. However, history is not destiny. And this is crucial. And I feel like I should have underlined that sentence and bolded it and made it a lot bigger. But I'm just going to kind of shout it out at you now. History is not destiny. Just because, not just, but even though, even with, even if your mental health or your challenges or the experiences that you've had, be them traumatic or glorious, shaped you in a certain way, that doesn't mean that it's a death sentence. It doesn't mean you're in a prison cell now for the rest of your life. Change is possible, or we wouldn't be having this conversation, right? Now, I want to point you, as I said before, to this concept that the mind and the brain are not the same. And let's break down what those things are very briefly, okay? And this triangle of well-being was developed by Dr. Daniel Siegel. This is not mine. He gets full credit for developing this amazing theory, which, there's many theories on mental health. There's many theories on relationships. This is not the only one that exists in the world. But from my experience, being in the running the long short road for so many years and being in mental health and in suicide prevention for almost 8 years, this is one that has stood out to me again and again and again as being so impactful for understanding how we can make positive changes. Because often when we talk about mental health, we kind of leave with this feeling of like, oh, I'm stuck. This is just who I am. And that's not true. So let's talk about this triangle of well-being for a second, okay? So we are shaped, our mind, our brain, and our relationships are shaped by each other. So what that means is this: you have a brain, right? You have a brain and a nervous system because the brain is embodied. The brain just doesn't just live in your head and like hang out there, kind of like swirling around in brain fluid, and doesn't have any say on your body. Your brain is extended through your nervous system. So your brain is part of your body, okay? So your nervous system and your body are shaped by experience, and so is your mind. So your mind, your ability to have insight, awareness, to have focused attention, your emotional health. So the way you relate to the world and the perspective that you have, how you feel or how you react or respond to the world when you feel angry or ashamed or lonely or happy or tired or joyous or ecstatic or overwhelmed, right? That's shaped by the biochemical experience of the brain, right? Which creates like our neural pathways shape how we see the world. And our relationships are really the factor that have a say in those two things. So our attachments or our earliest relationships with our parents, with our siblings, with our peers, with our teachers really teach us how to see the world. Because when we're young children, and I know for some of you watching, you're like, oh, this might not apply to me because I'm 60. It applies to you, even if you're 60, right? Your earliest relationships taught you how to see the world, because when you are a young child or when you are an adolescent, you're learning, you're being taught. Who are you learning from? You're coming into the world brand new, right? You've never seen any of this stuff before. You've never experienced anything before. And you're turning to your caregivers or your teachers or your grandparents or your older siblings to teach you about what's safe and good in the world, right? And so our relationships, when they are positive and attuned and safe and secure, teach our brain and our mind that the world is a safe place. And that helps us create mental wellness, okay? Internally and externally. The same is true, unfortunately, when a person has experienced developmental trauma or neglect or abuse, right? When you are in relationships in the early parts of your life that teach you that you are not loved, that you are not safe, that you are not worthy, what that shows your brain essentially is that your brain has to come up with coping mechanisms to survive in a world where your needs can't be met. And your mind, your ability to have insight, awareness, and emotional health is, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, oh my God, compromised. Your emotional health becomes compromised. Now, again, I want to stress for the probably sixth time in the last 18 minutes that change is possible and that history is not destiny. If you experienced a lack of connection or a lack of support in your early life that led you to having difficulties in a body and mind and brain level, it's not too late to change, even if you are 60 years old. Okay. And I'll give you an example. In February, I had an amazing honor and opportunity to travel to California to pilot a course that I had just finished writing on this triangle of well-being and helping parents understand how they can create through their relationships, how they can create well-being in their children. And we had moms from different ages and stages of life. Some, there was like a mom with a newborn baby there, and there was like a great grandmother there, and it was like the whole age range of women. Okay. And at the very end of the talk, a woman who had been there the whole time, who was the oldest person there, I think she was 76, came over to me and said, this is the first time I've ever learned anything like this about emotions, about mental health, about relationships, about the brain, about the mind. She said, but you know what? I feel so empowered by what I learned today, and I'm so excited to use this information in my relationships with my children and with my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. And if it's not too late for me, it's not too late for anyone else. So for anyone who's listening to this, like, oh, it's too late for me, my relationships messed me up, or my brain is wired a certain way, my mind is wired a certain way. Okay, just because it's wired a certain way right now doesn't mean that that has to be the end of the story. And that's really why we're here, right? Now, last two things that I want to include about what may cause mental health challenges. Because I think that when we have an awareness of what kind of external things may cause these difficulties, including diagnosed mental illnesses, right? And there are some mental illnesses that are genetic and you are born with a predisposition for, like bipolar disorder, right? However, having a genetic component or having living with a genetically received, I guess is the word that's coming to mind for me, mental health challenge, doesn't mean that you have to live in a prison cell of despair and disconnection your whole life. I know many people who have mental health challenges, some ranging, from moderate to severe, who have lived and built beautiful, healthy, successful lives where they're able to thrive, not in spite of their mental health challenge. They learn how to live with it, right? And I just want to give hope to everyone who's here who's like, oh, well, this is just who I am. It's not just who you are, right? So genetics may, um, be part of what leads to mental health challenges. Experiencing abuse or neglect or developmental trauma, as we said before. Mental health conditions. So if you have a diagnosed mental health condition, right, like depression or anxiety or bipolar or borderline, those will exacerbate and make other things in your life harder. When your mind is struggling, then your body is struggling, right? When you are experiencing a mental health condition, when you're living with anxiety or depression, it shapes the way that you see the whole world, right? That being said, though, not everyone who is struggling with their mental health has a diagnosed mental health condition. Sometimes it comes down to challenging life experiences. It's temporary situational experiences that cause us to feel a certain way. But then again, it doesn't have to be things that last forever. So challenging life experiences could be like, things as positive as going away to college or getting married or having a baby or losing your job, filing for bankruptcy, a divorce, losing a loved one. Those experiences can have a heavy toll on us, right? But again, it's not the end game. One other thing that I really want to stress here for a moment is the challenge of adolescence and the particular experience and the particular challenge that adolescents or teenagers face, that make them more susceptible and more vulnerable to mental health challenges. So the teenage years are a time in a person's history like no other time that they will ever experience again. Anyone who is listening who's a teenager now knows exactly what I'm talking about, and anyone who's listening who's an adult now, maybe you remember the ups and downs and amazing parts and the low parts of being a teen. Now, when a child enters adolescence, so the formal developmental years of adolescence, which could precede puberty. So oftentimes a child is in the developmental process of the teen years, even before puberty, the formal years of like, we often think of puberty or of becoming a teenager like when menstruation starts. Sometimes adolescence begins 2 years before that formal puberty period begins. Excuse the pun, right? But when a child enters the developmental period of adolescence, their brain goes through a complete remodeling period. So their limbic system, or the bottom of their brain, is fully formed and has gone through all of the official developmental things it needs to go to. But the prefrontal cortex and the cortex, which is responsible for all of the big things that adolescents will need to function and thrive in society as adults, that part of the brain goes through a massive remodeling. And think about it this way, a house that's under construction or a house that's going through a remodel is not a house that's functioning properly, right? You can't expect the house you can't live in a house, when there's open exposed ceilings and wires hanging and things, it just doesn't work that way, right? During the period of adolescence, the fact that the prefrontal cortex, excuse me, is in some ways inhibited and not functioning properly because it's going through that developmental construction means, just stay with me for a minute because we're going to do a little brain science, and then that will be all the science you will get tonight, I promise. That the limbic system, the area that's responsible for big emotions, fight, flight, or freeze, and really helping them sense danger and stay safe. That's the area of our brain that helps us, puts us in survival mode when we're overwhelmed. That part of our brain is like the volume is turned up all the way. So a teen between the ages of 10 and 30, right? I know that we don't think of teenagers up to the age of 30, but the formal developmental period of adolescence is until 30 years old. So between 10 and 30 years old, you will see individuals who are more likely to feel much bigger emotions, much bigger swings of emotion, much more feelings of fight or flight, right? Without the capacity of the upstairs part of their brain that can help them think rationally and logically, that can help them make rational choices and think before they act. This is a period of time where they're much more likely to take risks, do things that are dangerous. It's also a time where they're trying to find themselves. Now, if you're thinking like, oh my God, this is terrible news, I better strap myself, into the roller coaster and just wait until the ride is over. The adolescent period can be a very challenging time. It's also a prime opportunity for helping a child reach levels of growth and connectivity and connection to their relationships that can help them thrive as an adult. So even if you are a teen that is going through challenges and difficulties now and mental health challenges now, or if you're an adult who's like, well, how can I help my teen thrive? It's case by case. It's not the same for every person. It really depends on the severity of the challenges that they're experiencing. But the way that you show up for them relationally while they're in this challenging time period can scientifically proven and shown from thousands of research studies of lived experience that the relational experience that a teen has with the adults who are close to them will help them navigate better the difficulties that they're experiencing and also help exercise and strengthen the underdeveloped and remodeling muscles that are going on in their prefrontal cortex. We're not going to go into it in any more detail now because I want to get to the rest of the class. If that's something that anyone who's watching this is interested in, we do have a whole class on that, Resilient Roots. It's a whole class on just how you can help strengthen your child's mind and foster resilience in them, no matter their age or stage. But we're not going to be talking about that anymore right now. Last thing that I want to mention that, when we see what is causing the very sharp increase in mental health challenges in today's world in adolescents and in adults. Adults are not, we're not exempt from this. We may face things differently than teens do, but we're in it just as much, in different ways. Social media is totally distorting our reality. That's a massive, massive part of our increase in anxiety, increase in depression, increase in suicidal behavior, increase in self-harm. We're also experiencing a loneliness epidemic, and I think this is very much connected to social media. 40, 50 years ago, you lived near your closest family. Children were raised in a community together with their grandparents and cousins and all the stuff. And today, we're more connected than ever by screen, but we live much further away from the people who are close to us, and we spend less time in human-to-human contact. That is a massive problem. In fact, one of the protective factors and one of the ways that we offset mental health challenges is by having a sense of community and having social support. Another issue that we're seeing that is increasing mental health challenges is that we have everything. We have access to everything today. Everything that any person could ever imagine, ever, we have, right? Our grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-great-parents, even my parents could not have envisioned what would be possible in 2024. My husband's grandmother, for example, okay? Thank God she's 90 years old. She lived through World War II. She lived through the Soviet Union. She survived everything. She was here the other day and I was showing her a feature on the iPhone and her mind was blowing up. She was like, do you understand that when I was your age, I had to wear plastic on my feet to school because we were living in the Soviet Union and we didn't have access to real shoes. I had one dress that I had to wear every day of the week. And then I would sit in my underwear all day while I would wash that dress on weekends. Like, we have everything, but we still feel that we're lacking because we're constantly looking outwards for what's next rather than looking inwards for the answers, okay? We also are seeing an increased reliance on substances and prescriptions. So substances such as drugs and alcohol, right, which have become a very common coping mechanism or party favor, right? Like, now that marijuana has been legalized in so many states around the US and has been decriminalized in other states, it's a party trick, right? It's something that everyone does socially. It changes our brains though, right? Like, say what you will about it not being harmful or addictive. Okay, it changes our brains and you can become very dependent on it. Okay, it's not so mild or, non-dangerous like people think that it is. Another issue that we are seeing, especially in the wake of October 7th. Now, listen, everyone will have different ways of looking at this. I'm an Orthodox Jewish woman. I cannot talk about mental health and not address what is happening to my people in the last 8 months. It's just not possible. The increase in anti-Semitism, the increase in racism, the feeling of existential threat of not knowing who we're safe with or how we're safe, that is a big marker for people. I think that we have not yet even seen the tip of the iceberg of the level of trauma that the Jewish community around the world and in Israel is going to have to be dealing with in the wake of October 7th. So it's something that we have to really take into consideration, because even if you weren't directly impacted by October 7th or the war, that feeling of existential threat of like, it's not safe to be a Jew in today's world, that has a very negative impact on people's mental health. Okay. Now, we're talking about all the bad stuff and all the hard stuff. What about all the good things? What about the things that can help us? What about the areas that can help us feel better and stronger and more supported in these challenges? So that's what protective factors are. And that's really what we're going to spend the rest of our hour discussing. Okay. So protective factors, I like to describe them like helmets. Okay. Let's say that you're getting on a bike and you're going to bike through life and you're going to hit speed bumps and you're going to go through the normal challenges that happen when you go on, you go on a bike, you forget to stop or you stop, you short stop or something happens and you fly off the bike, right? It's going to happen to everyone eventually. If you're wearing a helmet, hopefully you will have protected, and elbow pads and knee pads, whatever, you will have protected the vulnerable parts of your body so that even though you have the fall, you're much more likely to be okay and get up, right? It's an unrealistic expectation to assume that when you put on the helmet, it's going to stop you from falling off the bike. Like, if that's your expectation of a helmet's job, just don't get on the bike at all, right? But in life, when you're riding the bike of life, you're riding down the path of life, you're going to stumble and fall, you're going to go through challenges, you're going to have hardships. Unfortunately, maybe you even may experience trauma, which I honestly don't know anyone who hasn't. And I don't mean that in a big, capital T trauma, but every single person in the world has gone through a difficulty that has shaped the way that they see the world. Having a protective factor does not take away the fact that these things will happen, but it can offset the challenges from being so difficult and can also help us create long-term well-being, even when those challenges still exist. Okay. So protective factors could be things like social support and a sense of community, support of a mental health professional, a spiritual practice, whatever that means to you, right? That doesn't have to mean a religious practice, a spiritual practice, feeling a sense of closeness, feeling a sense of sensing the bigger picture in life and recognizing that you are one piece in the greater puzzle, right? Having a connectivity to something that is greater than you. That is what I mean by a spiritual practice. So if that's through prayer, if that's through meditation, if that's through yoga, if that's through a religious community, it could, whatever that means to you, that's what a spiritual practice is. And I just want to point out that when modern psychology was developed, right, when Sigmund Freud was developing his ideas on what became really the blueprint for the way that we looked at psychology, really up until the 80s and 90s, when we started to make major shifts in development and see things a little bit differently than Freud had seen them. When Freud was, putting out all of his material, he made a very strong distinction, between spirituality and psychology, and really believed that the two could not coexist. And what we've seen in over 40 years of research now is that, in fact, a spiritual practice is crucial to a person's mental well-being, crucial to their resilience and to their ability to thrive and survive in a world that will be filled with challenges. Okay. Foundational needs. You might be rolling your eyes and wondering, like, why is Leigh mentioning the things that are so basic, like exercise and a healthy diet and sleep and staying hydrated? Well, it's because when you are struggling with mental health, usually those are the first things that go out the window, right? When you're so depressed that you can't even get out of bed, you're not thinking about eating healthy or staying hydrated or going for a run or even rolling out of bed and stretching. But these foundational needs are crucial to help us offset the challenges of life, right? Emotional, so mind and bodily and brain regulation tools, which we're going to talk about what those things are in just a minute. And learning to be in the moment no matter what the moment is. This is not an easy thing. These protective factors that I'm suggesting to you are by no means are they easy to implement. Because as simple as they seem on paper, we all know in the day-to-day, especially when we're struggling with serious challenges, it is not easy to put one foot in front of the other and try to reach out to friends or go to community events or even reach out to a mental health professional or pray or meditate or drink water or exercise or do any of the things, right? So what I want to suggest to you all is that you practice small steps often, okay? In order for protective factors to be impactful, in order for protective factors to be meaningful, in order for protective factors to actually make a difference in your life, they have to be small, measurable, and consistent. It's not enough to do one big thing one time and then check it off and then not do, not take part in that exercise or practice again for 6 more months, right? That's like going into the gym, trying to lift 100 pounds, dropping the weights, walking out of the gym and not coming back for a year. You haven't done anything besides for make yourself really sore and uncomfortable, right? So, right, you see there's an image here of a plant being watered. That's really what I mean when I say small steps often, okay? Think about what it's like to keep a plant alive. You can't just dump a seed in the ground with a gallon of water and walk away and hope for the best. And you also don't wait until your plant is dying to water it, right? You don't wait until it's crying for help and literally shriveling it in front of your eyes before you're like, oh yeah, I should water this thing. Small steps often. Pick small, measurable things that you can do every day. Teeny, tiny daily deposits. The smaller, the better, because the smaller it is, the more likely you are to do it again, right? If I tell you go for a walk for 1 minute or just walk from one end of your block to the other, that's much more realistic for people who are struggling than to walk around the block even or to run a 5K, right? Tiny daily deposits are what make the difference here, okay? Different times call for different tools. Think about it this way, different seasons call for different things. If you live in a place where it snows half the year and you can't get outside to run, go to a gym or do an at-home workout, right? For example. Or like sometimes you'll need time alone in a healthy way, not in a lonely, isolated way, but like time to reflect. And sometimes you need time with friends, right? Sometimes what is needed is screaming into a pillow, and sometimes what is needed is dancing around your living room. You're gonna have to learn ultimately. This is really the key into the practice, is learning to get in tune with what your body and mind need, not what someone else is advising you to do. Even though advice is great, and hearing from other people and getting feedback from other people on what kinds of things you could be implementing in your life, awesome, right? Nothing wrong with that. But ultimately, you got to listen to yourself. You have to know what works for you, so that you can make the most impactful difference in your own life. Okay. I know I mentioned this in the last slide, but it's so important that I'm mentioning it again. Make sure you focus on your basics. Okay. So nutrition, water, sleep, exercise, and social connection. When I say nutrition, I don't mean now you have to go change your whole diet and go plant-based and only eat tofu. If you're having a burger, have a side salad, right? If you're having pasta with cheese, eat an apple next to it. Eat 3 meals a day, right? Even if those meals are carb and dairy loaded or like full of stuff that you would be embarrassed to eat. I mean, look, I'm here drinking a Coca-Cola. Like, I'm human. We're all human. Make it measurable and realistic and be kind to yourself in the process. Okay. So other examples of small things often, okay? Things like breathing techniques. There's a lot of awesome videos on YouTube to show you different techniques, but there's things like box breathing, where you like inhale for 4, exhale for 4, inhale for 4, exhale for 4, and you go around in that pattern, right? There's also things like body scans, or different breathing meditations that are focused on breathing techniques. One that I really love is called, oh my God, I can't believe I'm forgetting the name. This is embarrassing. The name of the technique is called the Wheel of Awareness. There you go. The Wheel of Awareness, which was developed by Dr. Daniel Siegel, who you've heard me mention already tonight. I'm a big fan of his work. It's not only focused on breathing, but the thing that I love about the technique is that it helps you get in touch with different parts of your body by helping you shift your awareness to different things. So like parts of your body, your breathing, sights, sounds, it's just a cool way to get grounded and feel like really strengthened in your body. Another thing, another small thing often is also another technique that comes from Daniel Siegel, which is name it to tame it. This is going to sound super simplistic when I say it, and you might even be like, oh my God, this is so simple. Like anyone could do this. Yeah, anyone could do it in theory. When you're struggling, it's a lot harder to remember to do this. Name it to tame it means learning to get in tune with your emotions, recognizing when a big emotion is happening, and actually acknowledging out loud what the emotion is. So let's say you're going about your day and you start to feel your stomach's churning a little bit and your throat's feeling tight, and you find that you're getting really snappy at your kids or your husband or your coworker. And often the hardest part for most people is just even stopping and having that engagement of awareness of I am feeling a feeling right now, or I'm feeling something right now. So the name it to tame it practice, what it does when you utilize it is helps you get connected to what you're feeling, and that also helps you take agency over the emotion. Because when you're feeling really anxious and you're acting out of your anxiety, you're going to react to your life in ways that could potentially be hurtful or harmful to you or other people. When you can name what's happening and you can take a moment to kind of tame the emotion and get a hold of it and come into awareness, then you can respond from a place of agency and responsibility and awareness and logic, not from a place of, I'm panicking, I have to do something right now, and I'm going to do the thing that seems the most helpful, even if it might be the most harmful, right? Another thing, walk and talk or walk and think. So go for a walk and talk to yourself out loud, or think about your problem. But I actually really like to verbalize. My neighbors probably think I'm crazy because they see me talking to myself. I don't care. Like, I've gotten over caring because it really helps, right? Another small thing often is this idea of TIP, which comes from DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. So exposing yourself to like TIP is really about helping you in the moment of extreme distress, or helping you strengthen your muscles in your mental muscles in participation of extreme stress. So things like temperature, so exposing yourself to cold temperatures, like a cold shower, an ice bath for your hands, a cold plunge. You can even, there's like cold compression face mask that you can put on your face. I'm happy to share a link to the Amazon link to the one that I use, because cold showers are a little hard for me and sometimes ice baths can be a little overwhelming, but I like having like a cold compression on my face. And what happens is when you're exposed to that cold temperature, automatically your body starts to regulate and you have to really tap into your breath, right? That's why it's useful. The other parts of tips, so T stands for temperature, I stands for intense exercise. So like running in place for 90 seconds, doing 100 jumping jacks, dancing really fast to a really fast song, right? Paced breathing. So breathing technique, right? And also paired muscle relaxation. So that would be like tensing two muscles at the same time and then relaxing them, and then tensing and relaxing. And again, part of what that does is that helps our nervous system kind of come back into a state of balance. It's not going to work every time. You really have to find what works for you in each time. These are just some examples, right? Another small thing you can do often is engage in compassionate touch or embrace. So even hugging yourself or doing something like the butterfly hug where you tap yourself. I'm doing it a lot faster than what is recommended, only for the sake of, the time that we have. But our nervous systems regulate in part through touch, right? There's a reason why babies need to be held so often. It is so good for them and it is so good for us, right? We need that holding and that loving also. And you can do it to yourself. You don't have to wait for somebody else to be available to hug yourself. You can hug yourself, right? Another thing is dancing. Timed writing exercise is actually my favorite one. We have a whole course at the Long Short Road just based around timed writing and using it as a healing tool, which I love that class. But if you don't have time to join a 6-week writing class and you want to use this technique, my recommendation would be when you're having a hard day and you feel like nothing is helping you get out of this bad funk that you're in, sit down for 3 minutes, set a timer on your phone for 3 minutes, and just write out all the things that come out of your mind. I feel anxious. I feel so stupid. I'm a burden. I hate this day. Whatever terrible, awful, no good thoughts that you're feeling in your head, put them down on paper. Because once you see it on paper, it gives you a different perspective. It also helps you release it from your mind so that you're not obsessing about it anymore. And there's more room in your mind to be less in survival mode and more in logical and rational thinking and responsive mode. Okay. Other examples of things that you can do every day. Simple and free ways to care for yourself every day. Everyone can do this. Spend a few minutes outside, right? Like time outside, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. If you live in an urban city and you work in Manhattan, right? Find a park bench, go sit on a park bench. And like the one that I tell people to do often, which they really like, people often laugh at me, but this is one of my favorites, is go rest your body on a tree. Like literally go physically lay down on a tree or lay down in a patch of grass, right? Connect to nature because nature is healing. Take screen breaks. Don't do what I do and look at your phone first thing in the morning or spend all day on your phone, right? Take breaks throughout the day. Writing, doodling, or other creative outlets could be really helpful. Obviously, when you're in the throes of a difficult mental health moment, maybe these might not be particularly helpful, but it's not only about dealing with the challenge when it arises, but also doing things in the everyday to strengthen ourselves, right? Going back to that bike example, don't wait until you're falling off the bike to put on the helmet. Don't wait until you're having an anxiety attack to be like, oh, what are the things that are helpful for me? Do the things that are helpful for you when you feel good, because that's what teaches your mind. That's what creates the pathway, the pattern in your mind that says, oh yeah, I know how to do this thing. But it only works if you practice it when you're not in the throes, right? I mentioned already this idea of taking a cold shower, talking to a friend, talking to someone you trust, being heard, being listened to is a really, really big honor for us all and a privilege that we all need in this life. It's a big need for all of us to be seen and held and understood. As I mentioned before, you're going to be called to different things at different times. So just pay attention. Pay attention to what your needs are. This is the hardest part, honestly. The hardest part is learning how to pay attention to your needs. What do I need right now? What is my body telling me? What are these emotions trying to communicate to me? Because ultimately, our emotions, anxiety, sadness, depression, anger, isolation, disappointment, are all trying to send you a message that there's a need that needs to be met. Your job is to learn how to figure out what that need is and what the need is asking of you. Good luck to you on that journey, because it's a journey, but it's possible. Okay. Now, what if you're about to lose it? What if, like, these are all great ideas in theory, but what if, like, you feel the anger, anxiety, sadness, overwhelm, shutdown arising, right? Or what if you've already lost it? Okay. The first thing is to recognize that most big emotions last only 90 seconds. Sometimes you're in a spiral and then it feels like 100 years, or it could be hours, right? I've had panic attacks that have lasted upwards of 5 hours. It's debilitating. It's horrible, right? It's not a, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, honestly, right? That being said, what's helpful is to break down those massively hard moments into small measurable moments. So I can exist in this for 90 seconds. I can do nothing. I can breathe for literally set a timer on your phone. I can breathe for 90 seconds. And then if I need another 90 seconds, I can do another. Often when we're in the throes of a difficulty, we see this like it's a black and white, never ending picture of like, oh, this is how it's going to be for the rest of my life. And there's nothing I can do to get out of it, right? Break it down, make it measurable, 90 seconds. Okay. When I say do nothing, I don't mean surrender to it and be in the throes and let anxiety eat you alive. I mean, don't try to run away from it. Super hard. Super hard. Super hard. Don't run away. Don't run away. Stay in it. Breathe. Try to recognize where the sensation of anxiety is happening in your body. Don't try to think about the anxiety. Don't try to think about about solving the problem that you're anxious about, because trying to problem solve when you're feeling anxious or apathetic or overwhelmed does not happen. You will be much more likely to make mistakes and do things you will regret. Trust me, I'm speaking from experience when I say this, that when we are experiencing difficult emotions and then we try to act on them while we're in the throes of them, not good. Not good for us, not good for anyone around us, right? No one likes the way they feel when they make a irrational decision while they're under the influence of anxiety. It just doesn't feel good, right? One acronym that I like to share from Tara, I think her last name is pronounced Bratch or Brack, a meditation teacher, is this idea of rain. So this is a practice. It's not something that comes easily. Like, as I said before, practice it when you're feeling good, and don't try to do it for the first time when you're feeling really bad. But what you could do is learn to tap into, recognize what the emotion is, allow the emotion to be, so don't try to run away from it. Then, once you've given space to allow it, you investigate, why am I feeling this way? What brought this up? What triggered this? Why do I, what's going on? And nurture with compassion. Be kind to yourself and to the emotion that you're experiencing. Okay. And to the best of your ability, wait until you have found balance and then respond to the situation. So wait until you've kind of come out of it a little bit even if it's an hour later, even if it's a day later, the world will not end, I promise, right? The worst case scenarios that you are imagining when you're under anxiety will probably not happen the way you think that they will. And often when we're feeling anxious or overwhelmed, we drive our worst case, like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We bring about the thing that we are the most nervous about when we act from a place of dysregulation. It's the human flaw. What can I tell you? Now, here's the thing about all of this stuff, okay? Sometimes it does get harder before it gets easier. And sometimes when you are learning to approach your mental health for the first time, or you're learning to engage with your mental health, it is hard to face this stuff. That doesn't mean that you don't do it. That doesn't mean that it's impossible. You just have to recognize that sometimes when you start to face your challenges, it's like opening a door when there's a fire on the other end. Like it might blow in your face because you're exposing oxygen to it, right? Sometimes strengthening your mental health will feel like a chore, right? As I said at the beginning, not everything is fun. Not every, going to the gym, you feel better having done it. Nobody likes exercising. They like having exercised, right? Like no one likes writing. They like having written. I know as a writer, sometimes I sit at the page and I'm like, I have nothing to say. And then after I push myself and really give myself the opportunity to just be in the experience for even 10 minutes, I'm like, wow, I'm so glad I did that, right? Sometimes it will feel like a chore. You do it anyway and figure out a way to make it fun if you need to, right? It will also feel triggering. Sometimes facing your mental health and like strengthening yourself will feel triggering because it will expose you to difficulties that are happening around you in the environment. It will trigger you to, because of it brings up something from the past. The thing is that triggers are not bad. We have this negative connotation. We have turned triggers into something horrible. The truth is that triggers are messengers. When you feel triggered by something, it's because there is something that is needed from you, either to take a breath, to get curious, to learn a lesson, to engage in a different behavior, to take a break. Triggers are not bad. It's what we do with them that makes them bad. When we feel triggered and we try to run away, that makes the trigger louder. When we feel triggered something and we try to disengage, just makes it louder. When we're experiencing this mental backdraft and this experience of being triggered, self-compassion can help create long-term change. So that's really the last piece I want to leave you with before we do this DIY, or I explain to you how to do a DIY mental wellness toolkit, okay? When you're feeling big feelings, your inner chatter, your self-talk might make things worse. So when you're feeling anxious, are you judging yourself for feeling anxiety? When you're feeling sad, are you berating yourself and beating yourself up for feeling sad? When you are feeling happy, are you guilting yourself because there's things going on in the world that are terrible, and why are you feeling happy when things are happening in ABC, right? Self-talk is one of the places where we could use the most work for strengthening ourselves, because the inner voice that you have in here, if it's mean and crude and loud and aggressive and abusive towards you, it's going to make your journey harder, period, right? So learn how to pay attention to what your inner self-talk is saying, and learn to meet the thoughts with compassion, okay? This is a very hard thing. Like I could give a whole class, maybe I should give a whole class just on self-compassion, because it's not an easy thing to develop. It doesn't happen overnight, like any of these tools that we talked about tonight, right? But it's important to recognize also that your thoughts are not facts. The way that you are feeling about yourself in a moment of distress is not the story, right? It's often a story of trying to keep you in line, or it's a survival mechanism. Your thoughts are not facts. Not everything you think about yourself is true, right? And here's the thing about self-talk. We often think that negative self-talk or being hard on ourselves or judgmental on ourselves is necessary for the healing process, but it's not. And beating yourself up or hating on yourself is not going to help you get better, right? We all know that feeling of being yelled at by someone we care about. We make a mistake and someone yells at us, and you never go, oh, gee, now that you yelled at me and called me a bunch of names, I realize the error in my ways and I'm going to fix it. Absolutely not. No one does that. If anything, we shut down even more. So why is that any different when the self-talk or the negative talk is coming from inside our own heads, right? So if you are calling yourself stupid, awful, good for nothing, if you're berating yourself, if you're judging yourself, that's just going to make all of this healing potential that we talked about tonight so much harder. Kindness will take you much, much, much further in life. Self-kindness and inner compassion will take you to places that hating yourself never, ever could. Okay? Now, I want to just, we're not going to do it together because of the time constraint, but I'm just going to walk you through how to build this. Okay? So I take a piece of paper. You can fold it in half. I'm not going to because I'm leaving it inside of my notebook. But what you do is you basically separate the paper in half. Okay? Now on the left side, you put down at the top of the paper your needs. And on the second half, on the right half, you put small steps often. Now write down, you can even do this in a timed exercise, set a timer for 1 minute or for 2 minutes, and just write down all of your needs. Whatever comes to mind. There's no such thing as getting it wrong. There's no such thing as having a stupid need. If it's what comes up for you, then it's the right need. So if it's like food, community, nourishment, time with friends, fun, relaxation, a vacation, whatever, just get it down on paper and try not to judge yourself in the process. Okay? Easier said than done. On the other side, right? So let's say that I have a need to eat healthier. That's a need. Now, on the other side of the paper, on the small steps often side, can I break down how to eat healthier, how I'm going to eat healthier? So maybe that means meal prep 2 meals on a Sunday with healthy food that I like. Or, make a menu of things that I like to eat. Let's say that one of my needs is social time, right? So a small thing that I can do is set up text a friend tomorrow to set up a coffee date or a lunch, right? You might think like, oh, these are so small, these are so minuscule, like why are we even, like, what does it matter? Yeah, it matters. These small, tiny deposits that you make in your life every day are much more likely to have a big impact on you than big things sometimes, right? Self-care, right? We love talking about self-care and what it means to care for yourself, la, la, la. Self-care is not taking, I mean, I love taking a bath, but like, taking a bath, a luxurious bath once a week is a great form of self-care. It's not the only way that we should care for ourselves. We need much more practical and easy to use and attainable and easy to maintain needs. The reason I suggest writing it down and not doing it on your iPhone or on a phone or on a desktop computer is because we move what's in our head to our hearts through our hands. Thank you, Brene Brown, for that quote. You are much more likely to find out or recognize or see that you have needs that need to be met, that even though you know them up here, something about physically putting them on paper and taking them out of our heads and putting them on the page and then reading it helps us kind of create a roadmap for where we need to go next. Okay. Now, before I know that we're not going to do a Q&A because we're out of time. And everyone who was here has signed off. So it's just me. But for those of you who are watching the recording, I do have a request before we go. The Long Short Road is a grassroots effort. We're a tiny nonprofit trying to make a big impact in the world. And most of the work that we do and most of the communities that we reach is by word of mouth. So we do very little advertisement. Even though we do advertise our work, most of the way that people find us for suicide prevention, for our warm line, for our therapy fund, for our healing arts programs is all through word of mouth. And a lot of that comes from reviews. So if you benefited in any way from tonight's class, I ask you to please go to our Google page and leave us a review. I would also ask and hope that you would want to follow us on social media, where we do a lot of or try to offer a lot of different practical tools and tips for mental health on a pretty regular basis. But please help us reach more people, because that's ultimately our goal, is to reach more people and to help more people access healing and to plant more seeds for well-being amongst all people. Now, one other thing that I wanted to share is for anyone who's watching this either live or in the recording, we have our first ever full day wellness event coming up at the end of July. This is one that we are doing exclusively for moms at this point. So sorry, everyone who's watching is like, I really want to come, but it's not for me. We will do things for different groups and different age demographics later on, in the fall and in the winter, God willing. Right now, we're focusing on the mamas. So if you are a mom who lives in or around New York, or if you know a mom who lives in or around New York, who could benefit from a full day of immersive healing experiences, including yoga, therapeutic art, expressive writing, community building and networking, and just an opportunity to have a good time and nurture and really dive into self-care. Please share this event with them. I will also share the flyer with everyone who signed up, so you will get this in the email with the recording. The last but not least is I want to share our contact information, our website, our Instagram handle, and the email address for our office. If after watching this video you have questions that you would like me to address, please feel free to reach out. We're here for you. I want to be here for you. Please consider me part of your healing journey going forward. The more people we can help and the more community we can build, the more strength we add to the world, the more healing we bring, the better off we all are. So thank you all for being here and for watching and for participating in whatever way that you're participating. I really, truly appreciate it. I wish you all a beautiful, amazing, healthy night. And yeah, everything you need is inside of you. This is why we call the class The Power Within, because ultimately all the inherent God-given tools for healing exist inside of you. It's a matter of knowing how to bring them up to the surface. So I hope that now you have more ways to bring them up to the surface. And I hope that these tools were helpful for you. So thank you all so much. All the best and good night.